Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 18th, 2021 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. I would like to call the meeting to order at 5:09 p.m. To help slow the transmission of COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council, as well as board and commission meetings, will continue to be closed to the public for in-person attendance. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes, to practice social distancing. Meetings are broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and AT&T Verse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, and on at youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire Stick devices using a free app called Screen Weave, and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. That should be the number on the screen at the top. And public comments on specific agenda items will be taken when the agenda item is discussed. Can we have roll call, please?
We will have roll call, calling Commissioner Bartanian.
Here.
Commissioner Doom.
Here.
Commissioner Yurka.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan is out, and Chair Crignati.
Present.
4 of us are here.
The agenda November 18th regular meeting of the Glendale Historic Preservation Commission was posted on Monday, November 15th on the bulletin board outside City Hall. There were 3 commissioners at the last meeting, and so I'm going to ask those 3 commissioners to vote on whether or not to accept the minutes from that meeting.
I move to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Great. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Yurka.
Yes.
Commissioner Bartanian.
Yes.
Commissioner Doom.
Yes.
Were you here, Commissioner Crignati?
I was not.
You were not. Actually, I have that right in front of me. Motion passes 3-0 to approve.
Thank you. Oral communications. Jay, do we have any calls for oral communications?
We do. We have, one is ringing. We have Lee Smith calling. So
let me just read my preamble before we bring them on.
What's that?
For oral communication, I'll just read my preamble really quickly.
Oh, great.
For oral communication, discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Glendale Historic Preservation Commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision.
Okay, so let's open up the phone line for Lee Smith. Mr. Smith, you're on the air.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Lee Smith. As you all probably remember, Glendale City Council extended Millsack benefits to historic district contributors in April of 2016, which was more than 5 years ago. Since then, one application was received by the city in April of last year for my property, which was not processed. The justification provided was that no separate application for district contributors had been prepared. No other known cities in Los Angeles or Orange County have different applications for individually designated properties and historic district contributors. So Glendale is an outlier in that respect, with no known precedent for using a different application. We submitted a revised application in July of this year with a check in the amount specified on the application on the city's website. The City Council heard recommendations that would have added requirements only for district contributors in the last year, but did not take action. Additional information was requested by a city staff member in a telephone call in September. That supplementary information, which is not required by the city in the ordinance application or elsewhere, was provided in full on October 6, 2021. I'm letting you all know because of my review of the powers and duties of the Historic Preservation Commission defined in the Glendale Municipal Code, which includes the following acts. Item H, to make recommendations to the City Council on applications for properties to be included in the Mills Act Property Tax Incentives Program, which may be subject to historic property contracts. Item L, to advise City Council and city boards and commissions as necessary on historic preservation issues. Unfortunately, and through no fault of yours, the proposed application by the HPC has to date not taken place and has not been agendized. Please ask staff why this has not happened and why the timely hearing of this historic property contract has been denied. We have submitted twice in 2 years in good faith with no action resulting toward a historic property contract by the city. Thank you all very much for your time and for your service to the city. Thank you.
Okay.
I would actually like to follow up on that. I would like to ask a question about why
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
moved forward.
Jay, do we have any other oral
No,
communications?
Hold on 1 second. I'm trying to read something on the screen here. Okay, good. So that he was disconnected.
I'm sorry.
We can't go over this. I'll go over it obviously cursorily. We can't raise subjects that aren't agendized. The city is not going to be processing the Smith's Mills Act application this year. We still haven't formalized our new application procedure. City Council approved a very different procedure for doing Mills Acts for historic district contributors than what we do for Glendo Register properties. So the fact that there's no precedent in other cities is not an issue. We're doing it differently as directed by City Council. The plan is to have the application ready before the end of this year, and then to segue into the schedule that we told City Council earlier in this year when we kind of I think it was, I'm a little confused time-wise, but when we kind of gave them what we were going to do for bringing back, getting on board with an annual schedule where we start in January and we review applications after accepting them for the first, I think, 5 months, then we'll review them, and then we'll bring them to HPC. So we fully expect to be operational for Mills Act for historic district contributors starting in 2022. And then we're also going to make an effort to publicize the fact that these exist, because so far the Smith's application is the only one that we have in hand. And it's not an application for the Mills Act for historic district contributors. It's a Mills Act for Glendo Register application. And so that's without getting into any further detail, but that's the basic situation, how we're going to proceed with these.
But there is no there is no application for Mills Act contributors on the website. There's only.
No, that's because it hasn't been finalized. We're going to be putting that up by the end of the year, and then we're going to start accepting them from January through, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was January through May. And then we'll be doing site visits, doing reviewing the information that was submitted. The Smiths can also know we have a requirement that as part of the submittal of the application that we have a termite report and a building inspection report. And they submitted that, I believe, in October of this year. And so we're going to honor the reports that they submitted. As directed by City Council, those reports will have a 6-month shelf life. But if this doesn't get to HPC, the way the schedule is going to work, it probably wouldn't get to HPC until middle of 2022, so that we can build up a pool of applications for consideration by the commission and by council. So even if their reports are 8 months old or 9 months old at that point, we're still going to accept the contents. But those reports will actually influence the work plan for the Mills Act application. And I don't believe they've changed anything on their application to reflect any of the information from the 2 reports. Not a big deal at this point because we're going to be using a new application form anyway.
Okay, so it'll be up by the end of this year, you said?
That's the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
So that is creeping up on us, but that's...
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, but this is
any other oral
all
communications?
done with the knowledge of the planning division, it's community development department. So we have no other oral communications.
Are there any other calls for oral communications?
No.
Thank you. Do I have any comments from my fellow commissioners?
I have none.
Anyone? Comments? Kathy, Lorna?
Thank you.
Okay. No? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on to old business. Item 6A, the proposed South Cumberland Heights Historic District. Review of petitions requesting designation of Historic District Overlay Zone, PZC 1726236. Okay.
All right, let me get going on that. I will share presentation with you guys. How does that look to everyone?
Great.
All right, so I'm not seeing what I normally see on my screen, so I'll trust that you're all seeing this. And tonight we're considering, we're kind of in the final stages of the designation process for the two long-term historic district nominations that the commission has been familiar with and looking at since 2017. We have South Cumberland Heights up tonight, and we also have Casa Verdugo, both proposed for historic district overlay zones. I'll start with just a quick overview of where we stand with these districts to just provide some context, and then I'll go into the South Cumberland Heights slideshow. So just to remind everyone out there that we have 7 existing designated historic districts in Glendale, mostly up in the foothills of the Verdugos, but also Cottage Grove down at the foot of Adams Hill. And we have 3 proposals for new districts, 2 of which we're looking at tonight. South Cumberland Heights over on the left with the red circle, Casa Verdugo, the red circle in the center. And then Bellhurst is our newest nomination for a district, and that's kind of between Ross Moyne and the proposed Casa Verdugo district. Just so you know, Bellhurst is moving forward. We have selected a consultant to prepare the historic resource survey. I just got some of their insurance information yesterday, which we need to process their contract. So we're on track to get their contract processed hopefully soon. We were hoping it was going to be November, but it looks like it'll be December more likely. So that's moving forward well. And then I just wanted to remind the commission of the long flow chart that tells us about the current process for designating historic districts, with the blue boxes highlighting the public review points in the journey that an application takes from application date to city council decision. Council has directed us to come up with a proposal or multiple proposals for their consideration to streamline this process, because we know it's been taking way too long. And we'll be having that staff report going to council sometime, I would guess, in the first quarter of 2022. Looking at the bottom of this slide, we see we're in the final stretch, as I mentioned, with the Historic Preservation Commission review tonight, the Planning Commission review on the 1st of December, and then we're scheduled for council on the 14th. So we should have a decision from council in December. And then there's a 30-day, assuming there's an approval from council, it's a 30-day period before the district actually is established. So the establishment would be in mid-January 2022. Thinking about South Cumberland Heights, and again, just kind of a little bit of historical background, going back to 2004 and earlier, when the entire Cumberland Heights area was proposed as a district. And that didn't go very well, didn't go forward as a large 500 plus property historic district, but it did lead the city to develop the process we just looked at in terms of the review of historic districts, and also led to the creation of the historic district design guidelines. And that's part of the reason the 2004 proposal didn't move forward. The city hadn't established exactly what would happen when a historic district was designated. So we made up for that, came up with some really good guidelines that won an award and have been very useful in our review of districts to date. And you can see here that Ardeven Highlands was designated in 2009, the blue area on the right, North Cumberland Heights in 2012, and then we have South Cumberland Heights making up the balance of that original district that was proposed. Here you see the South Cumberland Heights district boundary outlined on the left. And then a nice, I always like these images where we can do a color-coded plot based on the construction date. It gives a really nice way, a really nice visual way to kind of understand how the neighborhood developed over time. And you'll see that the bulk of the properties in the district, including long stretches along Idlewood and Cleveland, were built in the 20s. And so this neighborhood really feels like one of the period revival neighborhoods where we see the range of styles from Tudor revival, Spanish colonial revival, American colonial revival, French revival, a real high concentration of those types of properties, and then merging into the subsequent development of the minimal traditional in the late 30s, and then the ranch and modern style houses that started appearing in the late 40s and 50s into the early 60s. So Architectural Resources Group had been chosen as the consultant for the survey that was done to look at both South Cumberland Heights and also Casa Verdugo. The city's ordinance for historic district designation has certain criteria that must be met and certain thresholds that also must be met. And part of the job of the historic resource consultant is to verify whether the proposed district meets those criteria and thresholds. In terms of there are 9 criteria for a historic district to be designated. The ordinance requires that only one of these be met. South Cumberland Heights meets 5 of them. And I won't read these, but I've left that up long enough for you to read the first 3, and then also the last 2. The idea for people who aren't as familiar with what is a historic district is that we're looking at an area that tells a story. We're looking at an area that has a cohesive sensibility, a visual character that helps us understand how people lived in Glendale in the past and how areas and neighborhoods in Glendale developed over time. So we're looking at a range of dates, as we looked at with the construction date map that I just showed. And that the consultant came up with a period of significance of 1922 to 1960, which is typical of the ranges that we've seen in the other districts, the 2 other districts in the Cumberland Heights area, as well as some of our other historic districts. These were key decades in Glendale's development. First, the boom that came in the teens, and then especially in the 20s, where the city became the city that we kind of know today. And then in the post-World War II era, where there were lots that had never been developed in the 20s and 30s, there was a lot of significant development that brought the ranch-style houses and some examples of modernism into these neighborhoods. So the goal of the historic district is to kind of tell that broad story from the earliest days of a neighborhood's development through the time when it was kind of built out and more or less looks the way it does today. One of the biggest jobs of a historic district or historic consultant is to not only analyze against the criteria that we have, looking at the big picture of the district, but also to assess each property in a proposed district. So they do field survey and research, looking at every single house. In the case of both districts tonight, as well as our other districts, we're only looking at single family houses. A historic district could have other property types, could have multi-family buildings, could have commercial or industrial buildings. But so far, we're just looking at single family houses to date. And the consultant's task is to kind of determine which of those properties tell that story that we're trying to share about a historic district. Which of the properties contribute to the character, the historic and architectural and visual character of the neighborhood. So you can see in the map on the left that the green properties are what we call contributors, and the gray properties are what we call non-contributors. There's no shame in being a non-contributor, but things have happened over time that allow it to not be able to tell its story as well. So technically, the definition of a contributor is that it was built within the period of significance, and that changes from district to district. So for South Cumberland, we see 1922 to 1960, and the property retains its integrity. And in a nutshell, that means that the property hasn't changed a lot over time, but it doesn't mean that the property hasn't changed. So you can have a house in a historic district that's determined to be a contributor, even though its roof may have changed and not be the most perfect style roof for the style of the house. You can have window change outs, you can have siding changes. The idea is you don't have a ton of changes. So you have some houses that are very pristine and haven't apparently been changed a lot over the years when you view it from the street. And then you can have some houses that have seen some changes, but they're still determined to be a contributor. For people who aren't as familiar with historic districts, the important thing to remember, I just mentioned visibility from the street. We only look at the portions of a property that you can see from the street in a historic district. So if you want to change your windows or change your front door or do an addition on the back of the house, you know, if we see it from the street, we're going to look at it differently than if we can't see it from the street. So there are different levels of review depending on the type of work that's proposed. If you're not proposing any work, we don't do anything. You know, you just go about your business and live your life. If you want to make changes on the inside of a property, inside the house, we don't have any level of review unless those changes might possibly affect the exterior. But in general, interior remodels don't necessarily have any exterior impact. So if a contributor is built in the period of significance and has its integrity, a non-contributor is either built outside of the period of significance, before 1922 or after 1960, it could have 100% integrity. In fact, it could be a great architectural specimen, or it could tell an amazing story about the people who live there or events that may have happened there. But because it's not in the period of significance, it would still not be a contributor. More typically, though, the non-contributors are houses that have just lost too much of their historic fabric, too much of the materials that help us understand that even though it was built in 1927, for example, it's lost its windows, it's lost its stucco, it's lost its roof, it's lost a little detail somewhere here or there. It can't really convey that significance, can't tell us why it's an important visual and character contributor to the neighborhood. So when ARG did the survey for South Cumberland Heights, they looked at all 216 houses that are proposed within this district boundary and found that 163 are contributors. That brings us to a 75% contributor level, and the ordinance requires that 60% of the properties be contributors. So obviously the threshold of 60% is exceeded. There are 52 non-contributing properties, and there's one house over on the right side of the map that's highlighted in yellow. And you can see that's on a flag lot with a really long driveway leading to it. That can't be seen from the street. So the survey team wasn't able to give an assessment for that property. And that's typical for these flag lots and other sites that you can't really see. Now, my screen is frozen. Okay. An important part of the historic district process, as we saw in that chart with all the blue boxes, is that there's not only public meetings where people have a chance to testify for their comments to be heard, but we also ask the proponents of the districts to circulate petitions. And there are two phases of the petitioning. One already has passed, where 25% of the homes or the number of properties in the district must have their owners ask the commission to do a survey. And obviously that was done a few years ago and the survey was completed. And then there's a second petition after the survey is done, after the property owners have a chance to review what was determined about the big picture of the district, as well as what was said about their individual property. And then the petition is asking the city council to designate the overlay zone. And it's important to remember, I didn't mention that historic districts in Glendale are technically overlay zones, a historic district overlay zone, which means that in the case of South Cumberland Heights, the single family residential zoning, the R1 zone, is in place still, but there's an overlay, meaning that there's a historic district that's applied over that R1 zoned area. So in terms of the recent petition, and we have to commend the proponents for both of these districts because they were circulating their petitions during a pandemic, and that's not easy. And it's hard to reach everyone in the district. And it just makes what's already a hard task that much harder. So at the April 15th, 2021 meeting, HPC authorized the circulation of the petition. In the case of South Cumberland Heights, the proponents thought they could get a few more signatures if they asked for an extension, which they asked for on October 21st. And they did get a few more signatures to just kind of boost their numbers a bit. But they were given a 6-month extension, but they didn't need to take that. They wanted to come forward now and let the commission and planning commission and ultimately city council review this. So we received petitions in October, and we also received a few more in November within the deadlines. And 123 property owners, the owners of 123 properties have requested designation. So since we have 216 total, that's 57% of the properties are represented. And when we say the owners, we mean all of the owners. It's very important that if 2 people own a house, both of those people have to support the designation. If there's a split in the household and one person supports and one doesn't, that vote doesn't go toward asking for the district to be created. So the city's ordinance requires 50% of the people, or I'm sorry, 50% of the properties to sign on, and we have 57%. We did not receive any official opposition petition. We did receive one email that I forwarded to the commission, someone who opposes the district who may be calling in tonight to speak. So based on all of these numbers, based on everything I've shared with you, all of the ordinance requirements have been met. The thresholds and the criteria have been met for designation. So because of that, we're recommending that the Historic Preservation recommend to City Council. So again, this is an advisory comment that goes to City Council, asking Council to approve the overlay zone, which would then establish the South Cumberland Heights Historic District. So I'm available if you have any questions, or we can move on.
I would be happy to make that motion if my colleagues do not have any questions. Chair Craig Noddy, if that's okay.
We're not ready for your motion. We have speakers.
Yeah, I need to.
Sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I tried to say something and I was muted. Yeah. Jay, do I need to open it to public comment then first, right?
Yeah, if there are no questions, open for public comment. We have the proponents of, 2 of the proponents of the district are on the WebEx with us. And then we have a couple of callers.
Okay.
Great. Why don't we start with the WebEx folks? Hello, gentlemen. Please state your names for the record.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Derek Cattell, and I'm with Mark Tabarelli.
Good evening, everyone.
All right. It's nice to see everyone. And we both are 2 of the 4 applicants for the South Cumberland Heights Historic District. First of all, we would like to thank you, Jay, and city staff for the progress, as it's been a long road as this recent effort started about 4 years ago. We also personally would like to thank our committee members who dedicated countless hours door knocking, speaking to our neighbors, and obtaining petition signatures. They are Patricia IT, Eileen Dubé, Carla Equihua, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, Barbara and George Malone, Bob and Kathy Nixon, and Catherine Yamada. Mark and I actually started this historic districting journey over 20 years ago, as we both were part of the initial grassroots Cumberland Heights historic districting effort. Back in the early 2000s, a group of neighbors just got together and we wanted to, protect the character and charm of our neighborhood. So we petitioned City Council back then to really advise staff to develop what we have today as the historic district guidelines. So I'm not going to go into the history about Cumberland Heights, but it's been a long fought journey, especially for the South Cumberland Heights neighborhood. But to date, our committee has completed and met all required tasks and steps of the historic districting process. And we are seeking HPC's approval to allow South Cumberland Heights to move on to the next step of this process. So thank you both, or thank you all for your time. And we hope you guys have a good night and approve us moving forward.
Thank you, gentlemen. Jay, we have a caller.
Yes, we have several callers for the item. First up, we have Kathy Nixon. Kathy, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here, Kathy Nixon. Hello, everybody. Good evening. As Derek mentioned, I had the pleasure of being on his committee. So I'm a resident of the proposed South Cumberland Historic Heights District. My husband and I were involved a few years ago when we collected signatures to complete the Historic Resource Survey. And we met with several neighbors, collecting signatures on nearly every street in the proposed district. I can tell you that a great majority of those we met with support the district. So while we received 57% of the homeowners who strongly support establishing the district, I just want to make sure that, I just want to say that that doesn't mean that 43% of the people oppose establishing the district. In fact, many of the 43% of the people just weren't home or didn't answer the door. And as Jay mentioned, the challenges we had with COVID were also a factor. And then several of those said they hoped we got the designation, but for a variety of reasons, they were uncomfortable with signing. So I personally, my husband, also, we believe the designation will be a great benefit to the district and the city of Glendale, and we ask for your support in approving the South Cumberland Heights Historic District. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nixon. Jay?
Okay, next up, I don't have a last name, but I have Steve on the line. You there, Steve?
Steve, do you mind stating your full name for the record?
Yes, good evening. My name is Steve Hunt. I'm the president of the Glendale Historical Society.
Oh, that's Steve.
TGHS. I'm here tonight representing our more than 1,000 members to say thanks to the city staff and HPC for the progress made to get to this point in time for the Casa, Verdugo, and South Cumberland Heights pending historic districts will be reviewed by HPC. TGHS supports historic districts and has contributed $1,000 towards each application fee. As mentioned by Jay, the recent ARG survey found that in each pending historic district, there were more than 60% of the homes qualified as contributors. Getting to this point in the historic district process has been a long road. The formal process for both districts has taken more than 4 years. The grassroots movement for the South Cumberland Heights Historic District, as Derek mentioned, started over 20 years ago. My congratulations go out to the committees of both pending historic districts for their efforts, working with a very complicated multi-step process here in Glendale. We enthusiastically encourage the members of HPC vote yes on both applications. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, I'll put you back on hold. If I fail, please just call back, okay? Right.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Next up,
Jay?
we have Peter Fouad. Peter,
Hi,
are you there?
Yeah, hi.
Do you mind stating your name one more time for us?
Yeah, my name is Peter Fouad, and I'm president of the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association. First, let me echo what was just said about the HPC and staff of the city moving this thing along. It took a long way. There were a lot of hiccups, but I think ultimately, thank you for that. I'm pleased to speak tonight in favor of the South Cumberland Heights Historic District and the other one. Our association heartily endorses formation of the district. Clearly, residents want it, and that's evidenced by the signature petitions. And it will fit in nicely with the existing adjoining 2 districts to form our cohesive whole neighborhood district. I live in and helped form the Art Evans Highland District, Historic District. and I'm delighted to have my neighbors enjoy the benefits and the protections of being in a historic district. So please, I ask you folks to designate the district and recommend it to City Council. Thank you.
Peter, did you want to stay on for Casa Verdugo, or that's it?
Yeah, no, well, no, actually, my comments also go towards Casa Verdugo.
Okay, they can take that. All right, thank you.
Very much so.
Thank you, Mr. Fawad.
Next
Anyone
up,
else,
we
Jay?
have Victoria Castro. Victoria, are you there? Victoria Castro? Victoria, are you there? Let me put her on hold and we'll try to come back. After Victoria, we have Serge Malone. Serge, are you there?
George, yes, I'm here.
George, sorry.
Okay. My
George,
name
please
is
state your
George
name for the
Malone,
record.
and I live on, my wife and I live on the lower block of Art Even in the proposed district. As you can, and also I have a daughter and her family live on Idlewood in the proposed district, and another daughter and their family who live on Highland nearby. We all moved to Glendale about 10 years ago from various points in the city of Los Angeles, and my wife and I lived in and raised our family in the neighboring city community of Encino. And I can tell you, over 40 years that we lived there, substantial changes have taken place in virtually all the communities in that area. There are many fine homes and everything in Encino and the Hill Country, but when you come to Glendale, you experience immediately something stunningly different in the way of community development. And you should be so proud of the city of Glendale. I live in a home that's been lovingly taken care of, that's now over 90 years old. It's a contributor to the district, and I'm very proud and supportive to have it in the district. And I want to say I lived on Art Even. There's only one home that's a non-contributor. I live next door to it. I like my neighbors next door. I have no complaint whatsoever. But their house and my house illustrate what can happen if you don't make an effort to preserve these districts. Once my house is torn down, replaced, it's gone forever. You won't ever get it back. And that's what we're striving to protect here. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Malone.
Next caller is Jack Karapetian. Are you there, Mr. Karapetian? Jack Karapetian? Jack Karapetian, are you there? Mr. Karapetian? Okay, I'm going to put him back on hold. And the next caller is Armin Balakchin. Mr. Balakchin, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I'm probably one of the few residents of South Cumberland Heights who is opposed to this project. My house is not that big. It's only 2,000 square foot. And our dream was to have a bigger house, and we're putting money away to build on the 10,000 square lot that we have on Highland Avenue. This literally killed all our dreams. And we didn't want to extend the house backwards because we wanted to design the house the way we wanted to, and not the way we wanted to, but the way it suits the neighborhood. I wanted to build a very nice, beautiful Spanish-style home that will suit our family, 3,000 square foot approximately, and our land could accommodate that. And this is just going to put a stop to all that. And if I were to buy a house in Glendale right now, same square footage. It'll cost me over $3 million, which just literally, quite literally kills my dreams. I have lived in Glendale. I'm a 30-year resident of Glendale. We've been living in this house for about approximately 10 years. I keep my house. I love my house. But the way the market is right now, it's just impossible for us to move up to a bigger house, and this, it just puts us in a bind. So I oppose the project. I think if correctly administered, the zoning and all the architectural requirements, like the house that's being built on Kennett, everyone will benefit, and the house prices will go up equitably, not only in higher proportion to those houses who have bigger square footages, but for all. And I, again, oppose. And if I have to file any other papers, I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your call.
Okay, the next speaker is for this item also is Victoria Michaels. Victoria, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Great.
I, like the last caller, sorry to interrupt over you. This is such a hard thing to do over the phone, not in person. I also am a longtime Glendale resident, and I am also in the area. And like the previous caller, I can't be okay with this. And I love history, and I love the charm of Glendale. But with a historical society in a district like this, these homes, for the most part, were built in the 1920s. We are now in 2021, and it is not functional for the most part. And if many people were to walk through a lot of these homes, you would say, well, you can't have any kind of functionality in these homes because they were built for a different time. And what happens in a situation like this, and I've watched it in the other, historical districts, you've throttled people who, much like the last caller, has a dream of a home. Should there be design requirements that keep in the theme of it? I 100% agree. I think you can lose a lot of charm. You get very cookie cutter houses that look not what Glendale should be, but for homes to be throttled back in a time period 100 years ago in a design style that's no longer functional to today's day and age, to today's growing families. And Glendale, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I grew up in Glendale, so I'm very aware of it. It's very family forward, and it feels this is very much a throttle of that family oriented push that should be there. And there has to be some kind of middle ground where we're preserving history and yet not yet throttling the homeowners. I think has to just be a middle ground, and this is frustrating to watch an area I love that's going to stay in a time capsule and not have any progression. A big part of our American history is progression. We're not moving forward. This is stagnant, and I'm sorry, but while homes are built in the 1920s, not every home should survive. There is so much room for progress in that area to really make it beautiful, to bring that charm back in, to push for that design aesthetic that everyone is looking for and hoping to preserve. But some of these houses, are just, not really up to code, which is terrifying. You have families in here, but I love and appreciate what everyone here is trying to do. And it's so hard to get up here and say something con to all the pros that have come and great arguments, but we're getting lost in trying to keep a bubble and not looking forward. And I really hope that when you guys make your decision, you want to move forward and not get stuck in the past. So for what it's worth, that's what I have to say. So thank you for your time. Thank you
very much for your call.
Okay, we have another caller, Patricia Atier. some version of that. I'm not sure. Tricia, are you there?
I am. I have to call in for nothing more than to correct my name, guys. Hi, it's Patricia T. from Glenview Road. And I just wanted to...
Hello.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to call in to, again, share my support of the proposed Cumberland Heights District and thank everybody who's worked on it. I think it's not just for the history of Glendale, but for California. This kind of architecture is kind of unique to us and unique to California, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you very much. We have, I'll go back to the callers who I couldn't get before. So we have Victoria Castro. Are you there, Victoria? Okay. Victoria, are you there? Okay, it looks like she's not with us. If you're listening, Victoria Castro, please call back quickly and we should be able to get your call again. And then we have Jack Karapetian. Mr. Karapetian, are you there? Jack, are you there? I'm trying everything I know how to do with this system. Mr. Karapetian, are you there? Okay, if
you've given it a call,
hear us, please call back. Okay, that's all of the callers we have for South Cumberland Heights.
Okay, great. With that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, anyone want to start?
I wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
And this is sort of peripheral to the issue of creating the district, but it comes up. It's about the survey, both in regards to South Cumberland Heights and Casa Verdugo. And I noticed that the DPR forms check the intensive box at the level of survey, not reconnaissance. And that came as a surprise to me. And Jay, I just wanted to know why that is, since it's, from the front. And this is not a criticism of the survey. I think it's well prepared. But I remember for the South Glendale survey, the idea was to look at what was supposed to make it intensive was looking at permits, looking at the history, doing research in the LA Times and other documentations to get a history beyond the architecture of individual properties. And that is not the case for our historic district surveys.
Yeah, the difference is, I think we've discussed this a little bit before, historic district surveys are kind of a hybrid. In general, in historic preservation, surveys are either called reconnaissance, aka windshield surveys, or they're called intensive level surveys. Historic districts fall into a middle ground because it's more than just driving by and making a quick assessment. There's permit research that goes into it. There's assessment of aspects of the shared parts of the neighborhood in terms of street furniture and landscape issues and things like that. So ARG made the choice to call this intensive because it's more than just a windshield survey. But it doesn't fall into an intensive survey could do individual property research on every single property in an area that's being surveyed, down to pulling chains of title for the ownership of each property. And that's not what is expected when you do a historic district survey. The other thing that makes it more than just a windshield survey is that the properties are being assessed in terms of their contributor status. So that, again, goes beyond just looking to see what's out there and has a different kind of focus. So I think in a nutshell that summarizes why, and I think it's probably better to think of it as a hybrid, but our field doesn't have another name for it unless we just called it a historic district survey. But this is pretty standard for the consulting industry. This is what we expect from a district survey.
So did they pull permits as part of this? Because I remember for the Neodora Drive Historic District, I didn't think that they did.
No, well, they do. When they're in the field, they're going to look and they're going to say, hey, this house looks unchanged. but when they start seeing changes or things that they don't understand or suspect might be changes, then they pull permits. So for every historic district we've done, I get a list from the survey team asking me to get them the permits for X number of properties. And then they kind of figure out where those changes may or may not have, whether they are changes, in fact. So.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And just one other question. I just want to get this out of the way, and then both Cumberland Heights and Casa Verdugo focus on the eligibility. The question of oh dear, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. It'll come. Oh, I know. It's the East-West Glendale Historic Resources Survey. Does it make sense to have ARG? These will need to be resurveyed, correct, to see whether properties are individually eligible?
Yeah, they would revisit these properties.
Okay, so it's not something that can be added as part of this survey, like while it's fresh.
Well, first ARG would have to say they want to do that. I don't know that they wouldn't.
Okay,
that's going to be a very large contract that will have to go to a RFP and a public bidding process.
Okay, so as long as it's going to get resurveyed for individual eligibility, because I know it wasn't done as part of the historic district survey.
Yeah, just if you remember, for the South Glendale survey, Cottage Grove was resurveyed. A potential extension to the Cottage Grove district was identified. And then the Little Craftsman district on Riverdale Drive was resurveyed. I don't think there were any significant changes on either one, but that would be part of the East-West, definitely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Or Kathy, do you want to make some comments since you have the floor?
Oh, I can. Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say that it's clear to me that the South Cumberland Heights Historic District meets all the requirements as laid out in the Glendale Municipal Code and is eligible as a local historic district. I agree with the reevaluations of the properties that were identified in the staff report. I really think it's a shame about 1610 Cleveland. That's the one-story Spanish that came to HPC before HPC had design authority in pending historic districts. And I think so the review was just advisory before it went to the design review board. And I think the staff report, the plans kind of, had this kind of fish nor fowl feeling to them. And I agree that the second story looks like another house kind of landed on top of the first story. And it's too bad that it does not remain a contributor, because I know that the HPC, I believe, required that the original door be left in place, that the front windows be retained, but it's too bad that it did not remain a contributor in terms of the historic district. But I think it's good that moving forward, the HPC will have authority in pending historic districts to make these decisions, so it won't be this kind of split between HPC and the design review board. But I'm in favor of the historic district, and I congratulate the people that worked so hard on it.
Thank you, Kathy. Lorna, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, and actually just following up on Kathy's comments, I also had a question relative to 1610 Cleveland for you, Jay, because I can't think of another home or of a home within a historic district that has wanted to add a second story. And I'm just going to segue for a minute to thank the callers who called in, all the callers who called in, but also those who expressed opposition. I know sometimes it's hard to call in to express your opposition, and that's okay. And thank you for doing it. One of the reasons why we have guidelines and an ordinance is so that there is a process in place And the proponents have, garnered the signatures that they need. And I want to say that we've always said we're not trying to create a museum or freeze our neighborhoods in time. That's not the intent at all with historic districts. So people can still add on to their homes, and people can add second stories to their homes. So circling back around to 1610, which we approved the plans for a second story while the district was still pending. If someone were to come forth on a contributor and want to add a second story addition within a historic district, would that just of the fact that they're adding a second story make that property a non-contributor?
No, it wouldn't, as a matter of, there's no rule that it would. It's going to be case-by-case analysis. There was hope with 1610 Cleveland. I think in the staff report, it was clear, like, we don't know that this will still be a contributor, but we are hopeful that it could be seen that way. The design did not change significantly from HPC to DRB review. And as Kathy mentioned, the windows at the front of the building and the street facing and the side windows were saved. So they did work to kind of help fulfill all of the requirements that HPC recommended. DRB actually imposed those after their hearing. But the issue there was the second story, and looking at it now, it is too prominent. It is right at the ridge line, which is where you often want a second story addition to go. But the lesson here is maybe that's not going to work for some houses in some of our districts. But we do have existing contributors in our districts that have second story later additions that were made that were still found to be contributors. And I think the lesson from this Cleveland house is for us working at the design review, the initial stages, working with applicants, and then for the commission when you're considering these, is to try to help establish what are the thresholds, how much can we accept? Because I do expect that we're going to see more second story additions over the years proposed in our districts. And at some points, the commission may approve them, and many other points they may not approve them. So.
Okay.
But as Kathy mentioned, the ordinance was changed so that we're not going to have this split advisory HPC binding DRB. It's all going to be HPC from now on.
Yes, which is much better in our opinion, in our humble opinion. Thank you for that, Jay. And I also agree that the applicants, the proponents have done their job, have done a lot of work. I commend you again for doing this during COVID. And I can, of course, support the recommendation to council.
And just to be fair to a caller, Mr. Chair, we have a caller for this item. I don't know if you want to open the public hearing or just move on. I just want to let him know whether he should stay on the line or not.
I'll reopen the public hearing.
All right. Mr. Zastro, Andrew Zastro, you're on the air.
Hey guys. Just wanted to call in and ask if there was any way to opt out of the historical district. My house is pretty much on the border. And like someone said earlier, the house really lacks functionality in most regards. And being able to alter it and do things like move the driveway from Kenneth down to another street, since we are a corner house, and do things like that. Just wondering if there's a way to opt out.
Okay. Thank you for your call. We'll address it after we close the hearing. Jay, I'll close the public hearing. Can we address this question?
Well, first, to make houses functional, we do not have any oversight of interior changes. You can basically gut the interior of a house and create a whole new floor plan. It is easy to put one-story additions at the rear of historic district properties. And we are able to approve, if it's an existing two-story house, in some cases, we've been able to approve smaller second-story additions easily. In terms of moving a driveway, moving a garage, the commission recently, or a few years ago actually now, reviewed the demolition of an original garage and its reconstruction a bit closer to the street so that it would free up some backyard space on a corner property. So the commission has been open to those sorts of changes. So without knowing what the property story is and what the project is, we can't answer any questions specifically, but there is room for flexibility in historic properties. And as Commissioner Vartanian said, these aren't museum neighborhoods. They're living neighborhoods where people's lives change and people's houses change. And our job is to just make sure those changes don't have a significant effect on the character and the quality of the appearance of the neighborhood. So,
to answer a specific question, though, no, a property cannot opt out of the district, correct?
Oh, I forgot that part. Yes, you are correct. We cannot, the first part of the question, no, you cannot opt out, but there will be 2 more hearings for both of these neighborhoods, a planning commission hearing considering the zone change and the final city council hearing. So there still is opportunity for public comment.
Thank you. Mr. Dew, any thoughts?
Thank you, Commissioner Carnani. I agree with Lorna. First, thanking the callers of opposition. I agree that it's very difficult to call in under these circumstances and not be here in person. And all the work staff did to get us this far. Ever since I joined this commission, we've been discussing this district, and now we reached the point of it. I'm glad to make it here this far. Having grown up in Glendale my entire life as well, I'm glad Jay clarified about the structure of old homes, and we are not creating museums, like was said. This summer, I visited the Carolinas and toured their historic districts with homes that were built in the 1760s that are still occupied and have no changes to the exterior. And I know we're talking about homes built in the 1920s, but these homes were built in the 18th century. And while all the issues addressed make sense to the caller, I would point out, I teach history and times do change. And we talk about growing families and so forth. And I'm glad Jay made those points that you can make changes. We can't speak in broad terms. You got to come into individual terms. So thank you for all your hard work. And that's my 10 cents.
I think it was worth about 25. So thank you for that. I just want to say a couple of things. I too am a native of Glendale, and as a real estate broker, I can speak a little bit to some of the concerns that one of the opposing callers had about property values and things like that. Because we're doing this by Zoom, I have the benefit of having computer internet access. So I just thought it would be worth noting for that person that I did a search going back to January 1st of this year, and I searched all of the city of Glendale for properties that are 2,800 square feet to 3,200 square feet. Nice tight window of square footage that he was kind of talking about. And 37 homes came up. 27 of them are priced between $1 million and $2 million. 9 of them are priced between $2 million and $2.6 million. And only one of them was $3 million. And it was only $5,000 over $3 million. So I don't think it's fair to say that a 3,000 square foot house is $3 million or more. I think that that gentleman would certainly be able to find, if he really had to move, could find a home that's comfortable for his family. Certainly, if he's been in his house a long time, he's got a lot of equity. I'm very familiar with the house that he's in because my mom and I actually sold it to, I think, the previous owners to him, and it's a great house, and I can promise he'll get a great price for that house. So if he decides to move, he can. But also, I think it's important to note that to the second caller who was in opposition, she did mention that she appreciated that there should be some sort of guidelines. And that's all that this really is that there's maybe slightly narrower guidelines than we already have in Glendale. Even before historic districts, Glendale always had a bad rap because we had design review. But I can tell you as a real estate broker that as many people come to Glendale for those things as people might find it not to their taste. So Everyone has different tastes, and I can promise you plenty of communities around where you can go and do whatever you want. Burbank, you can do whatever you want. There's all sorts of communities that you can live in where you can do whatever you want to the homes. And the other thing I think is important to note is I understand that people maybe want to expand these properties and make them bigger. The thing that I find kind of interesting when you look at communities like Studio City, places in the city of Los Angeles, it's very hard to find affordable entry-level homes anymore because so many homes get expanded and pushed out to their boundaries, and they stop being an entry-level 1,800 square foot home, and all of a sudden they're a 3,000 square foot home, and they're not affordable to a lot of people. And one of the nice things about our neighborhoods in Glendale is that we have a lot of first-time buyers are able to afford to live in our neighborhoods. And I think it's important to note, though, I'm not saying that a historic district is going to limit the size of these properties. These homes can be expanded, they can be made larger, even with the guidelines. But it's not a pity that not every house is expanded. I think it's just as important these days, with affordable housing being such a hot topic in our state, for there to be entry-level homes for people. And a lot of people do appreciate having a lot of yard space. So not every house wants to be, not every homeowner wants to change and do all of that. So with that, I think we can take this to a vote, Mr. Platt.
We first need a motion.
Oh, we need a motion. Sorry. Oh, Kathy, you want to say something else?
I just wanted to make one quick comment. I thank you for thanking all of the speakers. I think that's very important that we heard from a range of perspectives tonight. And I just want to say that I thought you all, my colleagues, did a wonderful job with your comments and with trying to put some of the concerns that were raised into perspective. I also just wanted to say, Lorna, in response to your question, I believe the historic district guidelines include examples of two-story, second-story additions to contributors that are actually fairly spectacular. So yes, it is possible within Glendale, and it's aesthetically possible. Like you can see how it actually plays out. And then, if I may, I would like to make a motion.
Please do.
Jay, do we recommend to the Planning Commission or to Council?
To Council. You're separate from Planning. They recommend also to Council.
Okay, I would like to recommend that Council approve designation of the South Cumberland Heights Historic District.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lorna.
Lack of enthusiasm here.
No, to unmute. I had to unmute.
Okay. Commissioner Doom?
Yes.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Yes.
Commissioner Yurka?
Yes.
Commissioner Carnati?
That's a yes. Thank you.
Okay, 4-0 to recommend approval.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I am going to be recusing myself from the next item. Mr. Vice Chair Doom, are you ready to take the reins? You did such a great job last week, by the way. Thank you for covering for me while I was gone.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Carnati. I hope I have big shoes to fill adequately for this item B on the agenda.
Jay, you're going to move me to the lobby. I'll be back.
I'm doing that right now. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, item B on our agenda is the proposed Casa Verdugo Historic District. Review of petitions requesting designation of Historic District Overlay Zone, PZC 1726288. And the project description is the proposed Casa Verdugo Historic District for recommendation to City Council with the environmental determination that the project is exempt from CEQA review as a Class A actions by regulatory agencies for the protection of the environment pursuant to Section 15308 of the state CEQA guidelines because it involves the designation and protection of a potential historic resource. And with that, Jay, do we have you speak to this first?
Yes, we have a
Excellent
presentation. I will make this, can you see my presentation screen? Doesn't look like it. Let's see. Are you seeing Casa Verdugo up there?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay. So here we have two great historic pictures of the two generations of the Casa Verdugo restaurant, which is the namesake for the Casa Verdugo historic district that's proposed. The original restaurant with the streetcar that kind of made this neighborhood happen. And then the second version of the restaurant run by Piedad Urbasol that still stands and is listed on the Glendale Register and is one of the key highlights of the proposed historic district. I'll be a little quicker on this one than the last. We don't have any of the upfront stuff. I didn't show the track map for the South Cumberland Heights, but there's a similar story going on, and it's important to remember that neighborhoods like Casa Verdugo and the various Cumberland Heights neighborhoods kind of have a different developmental history than neighborhoods like Ross Moyne, Neodora Drive, parts of the Woodlands, and the upcoming Bellhurst Historic District. And the big difference is that they were subdivided by different people, all within a relatively tight range of time, but you can see ranging from 1906 to 1924 in terms of the tract development, which in some ways can be seen in terms of the ages of the properties, where some of the earlier tracts have some of the earliest houses. What's interesting about the Casa Verdugo district that you're considering tonight is we have a bunch of early properties, and there's a very nice representation of craftsman style architecture in this district, more so than we've seen in any of our other designated historic districts, and in fact, more so than we see in most of Glendale's neighborhoods, designated or undesignated. Again, we meet, the ARG also did the survey, as I mentioned. We first look at the 9 criteria for designation. The consultant found that Casa Verdugo meets 5 of the 9, the same 5 that South Cumberland Heights was found to meet. What's interesting is originally the consultant did not include criterion C, but the proponents for the district made a very strong argument at an earlier Historic Preservation Commission meeting and directed the consultant to include criterion C. So you can see that that was done here. Again, criteria G and H. And then just getting straight into the numbers, the same story here, the same difficulty of trying to reach out to neighbors during a pandemic, the same difficult effort that, how do we get digital signatures? How do we go door to door? What do we do? Resulted in, a lot of public participation here. So you see the contributor map on the left with the green being contributors, the gray being non-contributors. The consultant found the period of significance for this neighborhood to go back to 1906, which was when the first tract was kind of laid out, and also when the first house was built in the neighborhood. And again, this district ranges over decades to tell the post-World War II story of how Glendale continued to develop when its neighborhoods weren't fully built out prior to the war. I've defined contributors and non-contributors already. Suffice it to say that this neighborhood has 75 contributors out of 112 homes. That's 67%, where the ordinance requires 60%. That leaves 37 houses as non-contributors and 1 house that was not evaluated, similar to what we saw with South Cumberland. It's a flag lot that you can see in yellow at the top of this map. The second petition, the 2 districts have been moving in parallel through the process. So at the same meeting where HPC authorized the South Cumberland second petition in April 15th, it was also authorized for Casa Verdugo. The signed petitions came back to us over the course of 2 days within the required deadline. The owners of 86 of the properties request district designation. So that gives us the ratio of 86 out of 112, 77% requesting the district to be created. And of course, that is well over the 50% threshold. Again, there was no organized opposition to the district. I did just while we were in this meeting receive an email in opposition. I didn't have a chance to really look at it closely or read it, but if the commissioners are interested, I could read that out loud if you'd like, just to make sure that that person's voice is heard. So in summation, all of the requirements have been met in terms of thresholds and designation criteria. And again, staff is recommending that the commission recommend that City Council designate the district and create the Casa Verdugo Historic District.
Thank you, Jay. If there's no opposition, would we entertain Jay reading that email for us?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Jay.
Let me find it. Oh, I might have another one. Let's see. I don't know. So the first one is from Mary Rivera. You want me to read it verbatim? It's not super long. So, dear Mr. Platt, we are against this proposal and we wish to preserve our independence in deciding which type of home best suits our needs and wants. We do not want to subordinate nor surrender our freedom of choice to a quote unquote historic committee or any such group of individuals who have their preconceived notions of what is best for all people. We live at 1204 North Louise. We chose this house because it belonged to a community where values are observed and differing opinions are respected. We particularly enjoy the several craftsman designed homes in the area, and we are happy that the owners are pleased with their properties. We respect their right to maintain their designs according to their wishes. And it is the same right that we wish to protect for ourselves as we keep and maintain our right to determine for ourselves what is best for our needs and wants, subject, of course, to the state's housing laws. Some neighbors may not have children and may not be perfectly situated in their current homes. Some of us, on the other hand, have children and grandchildren, and we may prefer to have our family close to us, which may necessitate physical changes in our current building design. This is a matter of freedom of expression and way of enjoying life that we do not want others to force us to give up. We've been residents at this house since 2006, and we have been responsible members of the community every single day. Please give our feelings and vote their due consideration. Thank you sincerely. We have a second shorter message. And I guess we should consider this having opened the, I didn't think of this, but we sort of opened the public portion of the hearing. If you would like the district proponent to speak before we continue with the second letter, but I'll definitely be able to read that if you're interested. That's probably the fairest way to proceed.
Sure, let's open it to public hearings and have you read this letter and then take callers.
Okay, well, Robin Fye is on the line with us. She's one of the district proponents from the beginning, so I think we should go with her first.
Oh, okay. I thought she could respond to the email too if she wanted before we turn it over to her. Well, I'm happy to turn over to you, Robin, anyway. So, Robin, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. You've all heard me give so many speeches in the last 4 years. I will spare you that. I'll let the survey and the petitions speak for themselves. Casa Verdugo is 116 years old. It's an irreplaceable slice of Glendale's history. And we have 112 houses, so we're small, but we are historically significant. And 6 of those houses are currently on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources, and I'm pretty confident that we have several more that would qualify as well. And a whopping 77% of Casa Verdugo homeowners are really, really enthusiastic about us becoming an historic district. And as Jay mentioned, had it not been for the pandemic, we're really confident that we could have gotten a lot more too. We've had several houses that were vacant. We've had neighbors who passed away. Several are pandemicing in other countries. Some were vacant for remodel. So we're thrilled with 77% though. That really speaks volumes, I think, as to the support that we have in our community. So we support becoming an historic district, and I hope you support it as well. And I also just wanted to thank you. This has been a very long road, and I just want to thank the commission and Jay for all of your help answering my endless questions, and previous commissioners who were there with us, Arlene and Desiree as well. And I want to thank my fabulous committee, the Casa Verdugo Historic District Committee, and all of our spouses and children who've been drafted into service over the past 4 years, especially mine, as you know. And I just want to thank you for listening to us, and I hope you help us move forward so we can finally end this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like it short and sweet like that too. Okay. Is it now time for any callers, Jay?
Yeah, we have 2 callers, both, well, one's a repeat, but I'll start with Sean Burcell, who has been with this project from the beginning as well. Sean, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you and good evening, Commissioner Doom and members of the commission. My name is Sean Burcell, and I'm one of the applicants for the Casa Verdugo Historic District. I was a resident of Casa Verdugo for 20 years, and I currently live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I think ARG did a fantastic job laying out the historic context for the district and evaluating it against the city's criteria for a historic district. And Ms. Bai has succinctly stated why the historic district deserves your enthusiastic recommendation for establishment. Beyond that, there's not much more to add to what's been said over the past 5 years. And since I hope that the Casa Verdugo Historic District will gain the endorsement of this commission this evening, I should probably stop talking now. However, I suspect, indeed, I fervently hope that this will be the last time I address this commission on the establishment of the Casa Verdugo Historic District. So I want to take this opportunity to thank some people. First off, let me thank the current and past members of the HPC who have so strongly supported the Casa Verdugo Historic District since we first brought it forward. And let me also thank the Planning Department, especially Jay Platt, who has guided us through this process and provided positive staff recommendations at every stage. And then there are those who encouraged us in this endeavor and provided guidance and research and technical support, including Rossmoyne Mountain HOA, the Glendale History Room at the Public Library, the Glendale Historical Society, Greg Grammer, John Locascio, Arlene Vidor, and many, many others. A special thanks to those who supported this effort financially, including help with the application fee, as Steve Hunt mentioned, the Glendale Historical Society, GNC Properties, Rossmoyne Mountain HOA, and homeowners Laurel and Mark Perlman. I also will get in trouble if I don't acknowledge my wife, Heather Norris, who had to put up with my magnificent Casa Verdugo obsession for the past 15 years. She should get an award just for tolerance. Of course, we wouldn't be here but for the neighbors who helped us, who let us make our pitch and then sign the petitions, as Ms. Bai mentioned. They signed the petitions in support of the historic district. A big thank you to each one of them, which brings me to the Casa Verdugo Historic District Committee. This is a group of neighborhood residents who came together 5 years ago and agreed to do the heavy lifting of creating the historic district. We share a special bond, united by our love of this incredibly beautiful and historic neighborhood and the desire to conserve it and to ensure that others can experience it in the future. Each of the committee members contributed to this effort in a substantial way, making this truly a committee effort. And I want to name them, and they are Christopher Ard, Michael Bain, Osbed Bedrosian, Elizabeth Chappelle, Jeff Chappelle, Chris Cragnotti, Court Bai, Robin Bai, Grant George, Jessica George, Dean Hartwell, Lori Hartwell, Jim Hinton, Michael Hunjan, John Kozluskas, I'm sorry, I probably butchered that, Laura Long, Matt Long, Howard Lowry, Nancy Michael, Heather Norris, Laura Osborne, Laura Whitcomb Perlman, Mark Perlman, Paula Sigmund Lowry, Greg Wallace, and Mary Wallace. It's been incredible to see the neighborhood come together and transform itself from a group of people who live near one another into a true community. And that's what this process did. And finally, I just want to especially acknowledge my co-applicants, Laurel Whitcomb Perlman and Robin Bai. I know that a couple of the commissioners have led historic districting efforts, and you know and have personal experience what it takes, the amount of work it takes we are very fortunate to have 3 committed, involved applicants to lead the Casa Verdugo historic districting process, as no one of us could have done it by themselves, no matter how obsessed they were. Robin, in particular, deserves the credit for bringing this historic districting process to its anticipated successful conclusion. When I left Glendale 2.5 years ago, I dumped all the files on her and said, "You're in charge." That wasn't very nice of me, but anyway, that's the way it happened. And Robin did a super job organizing the committee volunteers, interacting with Mr. Platt, keeping everyone informed on the status of the historic district, representing the historic district in public meetings, making petition assignments, tracking signature status, and generally ensuring that the Casa Verdugo historic district remained on track. The petition results are a testament to Robin's incredible dedication to the historic district. So thank you, Robin. And thank you to everyone who got us to this point. The current and future residents of Casa Verdugo are in your debt. Thank you and good evening.
I don't have a statuette handy, but I think we should have one. But you're so lucky, Sean, that we didn't have an orchestra standing by, because you might have gotten yourself in trouble.
I wrote that down.
While Sean's on the line, I'll just say, as the staff person who reviews the material that comes in from district proponents and the public in general, I think everyone who knows Sean knows that he's an amazing writer and researcher, and he did tremendous work to make this, an amazingly in-depth and really excellent application. And the team at ARG really was grateful for his assistance, as well as everyone else who's working on it. But in terms of submitting materials, that they were able to kind of strengthen and enrich the quality of the ultimate report. So with that, we will hang up on Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and if I may, I'm just going to say, Sean, Glendale misses you so much. Thank you for calling in.
Sorry, I disconnected him before. Okay, moving on with callers. We have a caller for item 6A. We can't reopen that, so I just wanted to let Alex, looks like Fumero. We can't open the hearing again because that item has already been voted on and decided for South Cumberland Heights. If you'll have an opportunity to comment at the Planning Commission hearing on December 1st, and also the City Council.
Jay, I'm sorry, I think he may have given you the wrong agenda number. Alex lives.
Oh, he's one of your people. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's with me.
Yeah, it says 6A there. So we'll go to him in a second then. First, we'll go to Steve Hunt's been on hold for so long. We'll go to Steve. Are you there still?
Yeah, I am, Jay. Thank you. And to Sean Burcell, we miss you too. We miss some of your grumpiness, but your amazing ability to do research and to make positive talks. No surprise, once again, I speak for the Glendale Historical Society membership, to ask the HPC to approve this and move it on to council. But I also have to just comment that every time I do attend an HPC meeting, how impressed I am with the time that each of the commissioners spend on doing research and the very valuable questions that they ask and the answers that come out of that. So thank you. Vote yes on this if I can encourage you to do that. And I will hang in and see how the vote goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Paula Sigmund Lowry. You there, Paula?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, great. I'm part of the Casa Verdugo Historic District Committee, and I just want to add one more component about what this has done for our neighborhood. It has turned us from a group of houses, as wonderful as they are, into a community where we've all gotten to know each other as neighbors, where we have held a gathering on National Night Out. It's brought this group together as a community. And I think that that is an extraordinary thing that can happen in historic districts, where we not only take pride in our own properties, but we take pride in our neighbors and we watch out for our other neighbors. So I would encourage you, for all of the reasons of the proposal, to support this historic district. But I also would like to do that in support of the people who make up the historic district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our final caller is Alex Romero. Alex, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, sounds good.
Hi, I'm Alex Romero. I may be the newest resident of Casa Verdugo neighborhood at 1308 North Louise Street, and I will make my comments very quick. But as someone who was not involved with this planning, I just want to say the reason my wife and I moved to this neighborhood is precisely because of the historic value it has. And, our intention is precisely to buy a historic house and maintain it that way. And we couldn't be more happy that this is happening. So as a relative outsider, new insider, I just wanted to put that out there. You're attracting new residents with this too who are happy with the change.
Thank you very much. And that is our final caller.
Okay, before I close the public hearing, Robin, would you like to add any final thoughts?
Believe it or not, not really.
Okay. Just follow up on what Sean said. Just curious.
I'm so grateful to all of you and to Jay, and I mean the Hercules that is Sean Burcell for kicking all of this off in the first place and drafting me into this 3 presidents ago. We are all so happy that, and Greg Grammer. Oh my God, Greg Grammer was there at its inception as well. So there's just so many people to thank. It's like I'm getting an Oscar, but no, I want to thank my agent. No, I really want to thank you, and the whole committee wants to thank you. I'm speaking as the royal we. We thank you, and please vote us through. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. Commissioner Yurka, you want to go first with any comments?
Okay, just a reminder, there was
I'm sorry.
One more letter. I don't know that, we haven't read these in verbatim before.
Okay.
This one is similar to the previous letter. I can read it if you'd like, or
please.
All right. This is from Lauren M. Rivera. We would like to submit our opposition to subject proposal. We wish to maintain our independence on deciding the design of our house that best responds to our needs. Times and situations change, and we wish to stay responsive to how we are affected. We do not want other factors of the past to dictate nor constrain what the state otherwise allows. Besides, there is a housing problem that did not exist in the 20s or such period, and which is a glaring concern these days. Even Governor Newsom recognizes this and has responded via SB 9 and SB 10. The historic district proposal removes any hope that more people can be helped, and these people may include our own family members as our family matures and our extended families develop. And that's the only other letter I've gotten during the course of the meeting.
Right.
In brief response, since they're raising the issue of SB 9 and SB 10, we do allow accessory dwelling units in our historic districts in Glendale, which in some ways gives you the same development potential that at least part of SB 9 does. So we're not preventing people from adding a unit generally at the back of their property. So.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Without any further objection, I'll close the public hearing. And I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners for comments. And since on my screen, Commissioner Yurka, you're in the center spot, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to support the creation of this historic district. The first home tour I believe I went on that TGHS organized was in the Casa Verdugo neighborhood. And it's clearly of tremendous historic significance to Glendale, and is really quite lovely. With both of the proposed historic districts, I walked through them when the draft survey was prepared and was just once again so, just so happy to see such a thriving community and such a beautiful selection of architecture, and to see the craftsman style so well represented. I found the opposition comments interesting and suggest to me how difficult it can sometimes be to communicate sort of what a historic district means, not only what Lorna had been saying about and Jay, that we're not freezing properties in time, but the idea that one is free to do whatever they want with the house in Glendale if they're not in a historic district. I mean, that's really not true. And in fact, one of the things that is an important part of information about historic districts, especially, is that the process, it either goes to HPC or it goes to the design review board. It's not adding a layer of bureaucracy. It's still, you need permission and permits for many, many things in Glendale. And so it's not a question between total freedom and constraint. It's just a question of who it is who's making the decision about your design. It's not the state, it's the city. So so I'm happy to see this coming to fruition, as I hope it will, with the Planning Commission and City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorna, you're up next.
Thank you. Well, I do concur with Kathy's comments, and thank you for that clarification. Once again, I always feel like it is difficult, and we can't say it enough times to help people understand. So considering the very early vintage of most of the tracts within the boundaries of this proposed district, I think it's really amazing that we have 68% of homes that are still contributors. I mean, if you think about it, for, I don't know, what was it, 116 years since, 1906, that's really, I think, quite incredible and speaks volumes. And I think the committee's ability to get 77% support at this point, or was it 78? Also speaks volumes to the community's desire to protect the history and the fabric and what exists there. And I think Paula Sigmund Lowry said it very well, as a former chair and applicant for a historic district committee myself. The community that's built through this type of a process is so amazing. Just when you start knocking on your neighbors' doors and getting to meet people and exchange, something really magical happens. So I fully support the district, and I'd like to make a motion after Chair Doom makes his comments. Chair Pro Tem.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to go on record and think that we have this opportunity of Zoom to hear from Sean Burcell. And I had written down, Jay, that where was the orchestra when we needed them? We heard his awards-winning speech, and I'm glad he thanked everyone, so we don't have to. And I only wish Commissioner Morgan was here to vote on this. Having seen this for years now come to fruition, and look forward to finally voting on this. So thank you everyone for getting us this far to this day. It is now time for me to introduce, yes, Commissioner Yurka. You're muted.
I realized there was something that I forgot to bring up in relation to the final survey that talked about a recommendation to remove part of the historic district, and I just wanted to. Are we supposed to comment on that? I mean, I would hate for it to go to council without us having reflected on it a little bit. And I just wanted to go on record as not being in favor of removing a portion of the district. I looked at least the properties on Maryland, they're all built, I believe, within the period of significance or close to it. And it seems that even the non-contributors might be made, I mean, they might motivate people who are interested in living in a historic district to actually restore them in the future. And I like the idea of Casa Verdugo having something as close to its historic boundaries as possible. So I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of the area as it's been reviewed in the past, and as it's as the historic district.
Yeah, I'll make sure that that comment is carried forward if there's agreement from the commissioners. So you might, before you make a motion, maybe just let me know if everyone agrees with that position. The reason that was there is that the contributor status for this district is a little lower than some of our previous districts. So that was added to the report just as a kind of a relief valve in case HPC, I don't know that Planning Commission will really have an opinion on that specifically, or possibly council was concerned about that. But when I ran the numbers, there's still plenty of buffer before anything comes close to bringing the district to 60%. And the theory is that districts get better over time, not worse. We hope and pray and all that. So that's, it may have been a little bit of overcautiousness on my part specifically, just thinking about the number and just wanting to make sure that we could look at it that way.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that we propose not to make any changes to the boundaries. And I also like the idea of, it almost doesn't, looking at the map, it almost, I understand what the intent was, but the proposed intent, but it almost doesn't make sense to carve out a section of Maryland. And as Commissioner Yurka mentioned, I think it's nice to have some of those non-contributors in the district to perhaps encourage restoration at some point. So yes, I would like to maintain the boundaries as originally proposed.
Would you like to propose that in a motion, Orna?
We don't need a motion for that. I think
the
expression of the concept will be taken as part of the vote, and I'll make sure it's forwarded to the next two decision makers. So.
Okay.
So now it is time for a motion to approve item 6B, the proposed Casa Verdugo Historic District, as written.
Okay.
So I move that HPC vote to recommend that City Council designate the district and establish the Casa Verdugo Historic District Overlay Zone.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you both. Okay, it's now time for a roll call vote, please, Jay.
Hey, Commissioner Yurka?
Yes.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Chair Pro Tem Doom?
Resoundingly, yes.
Right. Unanimous, 3-0. Go, Robin.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Yay.
You're welcome, Robin. Thank you.
I think
Sean's
that I
listening.
spoke on this the very first night that you showed up on the commission. Wasn't it your first night, Nick? Yes.
It was.
We've come
Very
full
first
circle
night.
now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Robin.
Right.
Is there someone outside to bring Commissioner Craignati back in?
Why, there he is.
Hallelujah.
Is there any chance that the commission would entertain a brief break?
Sure.
Sure.
All right.
What did I miss?
So,
anything?
My final duty as Commissioner Pro Tem presiding over this, I will now entertain a 10-minute break. Is that sufficient?
No. I don't think we need that long.
Okay. How long of a break do you want? 2 minutes?
2, 5, whatever people are comfortable with.
5 minutes.
5 sounds good.
5 is good.
Okay.
So it's 6:53. We'll reconvene in 6:58 with Commissioner Craignati presiding. Thank you all.
Are we back?
Yes.
It looks like we're back. Okay, welcome back, everybody.
Mr. Chair, you missed this, but we have a special, not a guest, but we have someone special with us tonight that we wanted to formally announce her debut as a staff person with us here in Glendale. Casey Conley recently joined us as a associate planner. She'll be focusing on historic preservation, so it's a much needed team effort we're going to be making together to move things forward smoothly and happily, we hope. And so she wanted to say hello to you guys, but I just want to say we're very happy to have her, and I hope you guys are happy to have her. And here's Casey.
Hello, all. I'm very excited to be here. As Jay said, I'm Casey, the new associate planner, and excited to be focusing on preservation in Glendale. I earned my master's in heritage conservation from USC in 2019, and I've been working in private consulting for about 2.5 years since my graduation. Glendale is my second home. I landed here about 7 years ago from New Jersey, just on a whim because there was a really affordable apartment that we found. And I count myself lucky every day that we did land here, and I intend to stay here as long as I can. And I'm very excited in this new role and to be with the city and supporting Jay and working on the exciting projects to come.
Thank you. We are very, very happy to have you, Casey. And I understand you'll be helping us out with the next item.
If I may too, I know I said something before we went live, but I also just want to say that we are actually ecstatic to have you. We've been looking forward to this day for a very long time. So welcome and thank you for your contributions already.
Hope I could live up to it.
No pressure or anything.
Sure you will.
No pressure. I'm going to share my screen.
All right, with that, I will move on to new business, item 7A. 3018 Paddington Road, Glendo Register Nomination and Millsack Application, PMA 2119095. Casey, you're up.
Yeah. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. All right. So this is item 7A, Glendale Register Nomination and Millsack Application for the property at 3018 Paddington Road. 3018 Paddington Road is located in the neighborhood of the city known as Chevy Chase Canyon. The property is north of the 134 and just west of the Chevy Chase Golf Club. The residence is located on a 9,609 square foot irregular shaped through lot, and the building measures 2,334 square feet. The property was originally designed for Edwin and Catherine Powers in 1936 and appears to have stayed in the Powers family until the early 2000s. Property changed hands multiple times before being purchased by the current owners in 2017. The residence is set below grade of the street, designed in the American Colonial Revival architectural style, and is clad in a mixture of stucco, horizontal cedar siding, and brick with a generally flat primary facade. The main volume of the primary facade is broken up by a one-story brick wing to the east and a projecting attached garage to the west. The attached garage is at street grade and was extended towards the street in 1968 by about 3.5 feet. The garage is the most dominating feature on the primary facade. The side facades are generally simple in design. The western facade has an original elevated entrance. The door itself was replaced in 2018 with an in-kind style. We could see that in the photo all the way to the left here. That's going to be that western facade with the entrance and the porch. It does have an additional door below the, leading to a storage space below the porch as well. And then the eastern facade is comprised of that one-story wing with brick and weeping mortar. The wing has a steel casement window and round circular window. These are the only original windows remaining on the building. The rear facade of the house is comprised mainly of an elevated porch with a shed roof supported by square posts. The rear yard is somewhat terraced with an in-ground pool and downsloped rear open space. So the residence was designed by architecture firm Spencer and Landon, architects which comprised of John James Landon and Charles Roddick Spencer. Spencer trained as an architect under Albert Kahn in Detroit and prominent architect Myron Hunt in Los Angeles. Spencer received his California architecture license in 1925, and in 1926 he designed the Art Deco McDaniel Motor Company that once stood at 819 South Brand Boulevard as one of his first solo projects, which is seen here on the left. And Landon attended the UCLA School of Arts and Architecture, where he graduated in 1925. We found little information on his solo work after graduation, but he did start his own firm in the 1950s after the death of Spencer. He formed James Landon and Associates and became one of the leading church architects in Los Angeles. These are two of his designs of the first Presbyterian churches, one in North Hollywood and one in Burbank. We didn't find any information on either architect to individually substantiate them as master architects in their own right. The firm of Spencer and Landon Architects was formed in the early 1930s, with their offices located at 1924 Hillhurst Ave, which is no longer extant. The firm was locally active in single-family residential design and institutional designs, with occasional mentions of their works in the Los Angeles Times. In 1935, the firm won a design contest held by Simmons Brick Co. for use of the reinforced grout lock brick masonry in a residential design. And the same year, they designed the Palm Springs Racket Club. In January 2021, the Racket Club was designated a City of Palm Springs Historic Resource, but the designation does not identify it for its association with Spencer and Landon. It is, but rather for its association with commercial and tourism development linked to Hollywood. The report by Historic Resources Group does not mention the firm in any substance other than noting their names as the architects. The Glendale Register nomination for the property does also cite the firm as the architects for the Lamar Park Market, yet the drawings within the nomination from 1928 were never realized, and the market, known as the Mesa Verde Market, was ultimately designed by the George J. Adams firm in 1929. Though the firm consistently designed single-family residences in the area using similar designs to the subject property, like the photograph of the spec plans for a small house of reinforced grout lock masonry on the left, which is from 1934 Architects Engineering, the firm does not appear to rise to a level of master and does not appear to have an impact on the greater architectural profession of the time. Though the property is an interesting example of American colonial revival architecture, the alterations to the property in recent years deter from its original design intent and greatly impact the integrity of the property. The two-story addition added in 2018 is located in the northwest corner of the building, adjacent to the original rear porch on the upslope of the lot. The addition is constructed of brick and weeping mortar and board form concrete with a gabled roof, which is sympathetic to the original design of the one-story wing. Yet the massing of the addition is somewhat overpowering because of its placement at the upslope, producing additional height that significantly alters the original building volume and scale. Additionally, the majority of the windows, originally steel casement windows, were replaced in 2018 with wood-clad casement windows. I do want to make as a correction, the staff report did cite that there were sliding windows on the building, which do not exist. All the window replacements are push-open casement. And then a leaded glass window in the primary facade was replicated as well in 2018. Therefore, due to the level of alteration, staff finds the property is not eligible for listing in the Glendale Register under any criteria. I'm happy to answer questions on the property.
Thank you, Casey. Job well done.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for Casey? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Jay, our applicant is here, yes?
Yes, Beth Tapper has joined us. Okay. Casey, if you could unshare for now, and we'll come back if you need to.
Thank you, Dan.
So thank you, Casey. I'm honored to be your first potential nomination. And I would also like to thank Jay Platt and Casey for being so helpful during this process. Although, as they stated in their staff report, they do not support the nomination. They were both incredibly supportive in so many other ways. So thank you both. I would also like to thank the Historic Preservation Commissioners for visiting our home and being so gracious with their time. As I explained during the site visits, our decision to make alterations to the house was due to a serious child illness in our family. Unfortunately, the original kitchen was extremely small, even by 1936 standards. So the alterations were necessary for us to help ease our family hardship and that came along with our daughter's diagnosis, and to help create an environment that would support her medical issues. So that being said, we have the utmost respect for Charles Roderick Spencer and John James Landon, and believe that the alterations do not actually have a serious impact on the architectural integrity of the home. As a matter of fact, most times visitors believe the study is the actual addition and not the addition itself. I thoughtfully worked with our architect to honor Spencer and Landon as we came up with the design for the addition in the back of the house, which would expand the kitchen. The home was built in 1936 for Mr. and Mrs. Powers, and according to the 1940 census, the couple lived here without children. So it was sort of obvious to us the home was actually not built for a family with small children like we have. We respectfully disagree that the property does not meet criterion 3. We believe that the Spencer and Landon house is a wonderful example of period architectural style and method of construction. Of the 137 properties currently on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources, at least from what I saw, there is not one example of the American colonial revival style. So if given the nomination by the commission, the Spencer and Landon house would be the first of its kind on the register. And as you can see from the book that I submitted called A Key to Your New Home, published in 1938, the Spencer and Landon house was featured alongside master architects like Schindler and Neutra. And speaking of Neutra, that is how we came to find out that Spencer and Landon designed the Palm Springs Racquet Club, a gathering place for the Hollywood elite in the 30s, because in the book, Richard Neutra's Miller House, Spencer and Landon were cited as the architects of the infamous club and its proximity to the Miller House and the influence the Racquet Club had on the area. It was a 1930s celebrity hangout, and the goings-on at the club were reportedly quite raucous, so much so that the Charles Farrell show hit the airwaves based on the club's revelries. And so lastly, we do believe that the technique of the reinforced grout block brick masonry utilized by Spencer and Landon was used on the study here. Obviously, we can't say for sure, but it would be odd if they didn't, considering they had been using this technique for some time before building this home. And there is significance in using the bricks from the Simmons Brick Company. I won't get into the historical significance of the company as I laid it out in the submitted materials, but Spencer and Landon were awarded, as mentioned by Casey, for their technique and design by Walter R. Simmons himself. And in this way, we do believe that the home meets criteria for number 5, exemplifying the early heritage of the city of Glendale, of LA County in Southern California. The Spencer and Landon house was part of a mere spattering of homes, forming a kind of constellation here in the early years of the Chevy Chase Canyon. So given all of this, our hope is that the Historic Preservation Commission votes to approve the nomination for the Spencer and Landon house, a home we believe is unique and significant in its architecture and deserving of this honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Jay, do we have any callers?
Yeah, there are no callers.
Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing. Fellow commissioners, anyone have any thoughts they'd like to express? Nick, Kathy, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to ask a question. So by what process was the work approved?
Are you asking Jay or the homeowner?
Alterations, whoever can answer.
I'll have to open the public hearing.
I'm sorry.
Let's start
Yeah.
with Jay. If Jay, maybe you can answer that question. If not, I'll open the public hearing.
Yeah, Beth Tapper consulted early on, saying that she wanted to put an addition on the house. She also told us that she was very interested in the Glendale Register, and she was familiar with the register from a previous property, and so she knew what she was getting into and really thought this house was worthy. And you know, we don't love making negative recommendations for what are obviously nice houses. We do think if this house hadn't been altered in the way it was, that it would be, I think, a solid candidate for your consideration for the register. For the addition, we did do design review with the acknowledgement that this addition could impact the Glendo Register eligibility. Unfortunately, the windows were not something that we reviewed. They were looked at by the case planner, evidently. There's some uncertainty about what happened there, but we never knew going into this until we came out to visit that the windows had been changed to the extent that they were.
Okay, thanks.
That answer your question, Kathy? Anyone else? Lorna, do you have any comments?
Yeah, we're going into commissioner comments.
Yes.
Okay. So Beth, I'd like to start by thanking you for the tour of the home. Your love for the home is obvious in the research you've done and the care you've taken in, you know, your desire to be sensitive to the design of the home, even with the changes and additions you've made. So I agree with staff that the design of the house is very interesting. Can we go back to pictures, or would that be too much trouble? You know,
you want to bring those back up? Yeah.
And share my screen again.
Yeah, I think, you know, the very traditional sort of block facade that's bookended with the shed roofed garage. Oh, sorry, if we can go to the front. Thank you. You know, the shed roofed garage sort of protruding forward, and then, you know, following the orientation of the main roof. And then on the other side, we have the very interesting one-story volume, again with a shed roof. I don't know if we have that picture that's set sort of perpendicular to the house. And for me, that volume is really interesting. I happen to really like brick construction with weeping mortar. But I have to agree with the staff that I think the house has lost too much of its integrity. If we can go around to the back, please, Casey. I know you did go through a DRB process, you know, without the intention of being listed on the register. I think if this project were brought to this body after the home had been designated, I think we would have requested something more subservient to the house than that that two-story addition. I think also just the fact that the magnitude of the materials that were lost in the change out of the original steel windows. And I know you did, you know, you really wanted to create wood windows that matched the dimensions and the style of the original windows. Still, we've lost a tremendous amount of original material. I think the shutters at the front of the house are missing as well. And I just want to make it clear also that when we put a home, when we designate a home on the register, we're really taking a 360-degree view at the property. So even though the two-story addition is at the rear of the house, it really does matter. And I'm not sure what might have been recommended, but I'm going to guess it probably wouldn't have been a two-story volume. Just to make a suggestion.
I could just jump in for the record. This property is a through lot, so it has two street frontages. So the
Okay.
rear addition actually does face Edgewick, the other street. So.
Okay. So
You're completely right about the 360, even if you don't have that condition.
right. So in this case, okay, yes, understood. Thank you for reminding me that was in the report. So, you know, it is viewable from the other side of the street. And sorry, I'm just going to look at some of my notes here for a moment. Yeah, so I think for now, that's really where I stand. I completely appreciate that you needed to make changes that were appropriate for your family and your family situation. And you have a beautiful home, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. And I sincerely hope that you do. But I do feel that the changes do not warrant listing on the register. And I look forward to hearing from my colleagues.
Thank you, Lorna. Anyone else?
Casey, if you could unshare again, just.
Thanks, Casey.
I have some comments. Yeah, thank you. I also very much appreciated the research that the applicant's done in support of the nomination. I substantially agree with what my colleague Lorna Vitanian said, that the alterations to the property it just cannot be overlooked and are too significant to support designation on the Glendale Register. They don't meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. And I'm particularly concerned about the replacement of the windows. It was a little heartbreaking to see the original steel window in place with its very slender profile. And that's just so difficult, if not impossible, to match with wood. I do have another issue of great concern, and this isn't the applicant is not responsible because the applicant is not charged with evaluating the impacts of alterations to properties that are eligible for the Glendale Register. But I do agree with the staff report and with Jay that if this property were closer to its original appearance, that is the appearance of 3.5 years ago, and it possessed that integrity, that it would be a very good candidate for designation. And we were just told that the addition was a concern, that it would impact its eligibility for the Glendale Register. And if that's the case, that addition should not have been approved. I don't know that this went to the Design Review Board. It may have gotten design review, but it should not have been allowed. And the staff was a little vague about how these approvals were made, but I would like to know, because they have resulted in substantial adverse impact to the significance of a property that was eligible for the Glendale Register, and this should have triggered a full CEQA review. So and this is, again, not a criticism of the applicant, but I think it is very disappointing to lose. What's happened is a historic resource has been lost. And that is, I'm very disappointed to see that as a commissioner on this body.
Thank you, Catherine. Beth, you look like you had your hand up. Did you want to say something? I can reopen the public hearing if you'd like to say something. Okay. Yes.
Oh yeah. I was just going to say yes. It went through a design review board. I mean, it went through all the channels appropriately. And I don't think, and to Jay, and to in the defense of Jay and what happened, I don't think. Well, I hadn't done the research on the home then, and so I didn't really understand anything then either. I think it was just like, I think there's significance here, but I need to make this
Yeah.
change. Otherwise, I can't live here, right? Like we would have had to, I mean, we love Glendale. We've been living in the Chevy, I mean, we lived 2 doors away in the Dutton house. So we were so excited to be able to stay here. We've been here for 11 years. And so it was kind of like, we had to do this or we just had to sell, move and sell the house.
Okay.
If that makes, does that answer anything? I don't know if that answers.
Maybe.
It does. It's not, again, it's not that your decision. It's just approaching historic preservation staff saying, I'd like to put this on the Glendale Register. I'm proposing an addition. If that addition seems as though it will render it ineligible for the Glendale Register, then I believe that the approvals were mishandled. Because if the approvals render it ineligible, and that is staff's recommendation. That is staff's assertion. It is ineligible now as a result of the work. It should have been handled differently. So this is not on you. It's on the way it was handled.
Since staff is here to discuss this, I'd be happy to tell you where we came in on this. And I don't believe.
First of all, I'm going to close the public hearing, Jay, and go ahead and respond. Thank you.
I don't think this went to design review board. This was done as a, I don't remember if it was an ADR or if we had ADR, administrative design review at that point. I'd have to go back and look. This came to us as an addition at the rear of the house. I'm not sure at this very moment that if you were only reviewing the addition, that you would necessarily have said this isn't appropriate and that this wouldn't qualify for the Glendale Register. If the original proposal had been to remove windows and do the addition, it would have been looked at quite differently, and the staff report would have, it would have been a different situation. So I hear what you're saying, and I think there's room for, a gray area here. Like, is this house definitely Glendale Register eligible or not? Even just looking at it, there are some things that I say yes, and some things I would say, it's, But overall, I do think it was an eligible house, and I think it still could be with the addition. In hindsight, we might have said if the kitchen was really driving this, that maybe the 2-story aspect of the addition wasn't really necessary, and that would have made it more differential in scale. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying this is a complete defense of the staff opinion, but the project you're looking at is very different from the project that we considered because of the other changes that were made.
If I may.
Thank you, Jay. Lorna?
So Jay, just to drill into that a little more, and I think you did say it, we probably would have wanted something a little more subservient in terms of the 2-story addition, but I think also the finish, the articulation, the brick with the weeping mortar, I'm going to guess we probably would have stayed away from that. Are we not creating a false sense of history there? That's what I'm thinking.
Repeating materials is not necessarily creating a false sense of history. In fact, it's sometimes a desired aspect. As Beth mentioned, I think anyone looking at this house might suspect that the study on the front of the house is an addition because it's just a quirky feature that is an original feature. So that's a good point, Commissioner Rotanian, that we could look at it that way, but we also do often replicate materials on additions, including additions that have been approved by the Commission for Millsack properties. So there's room within the standards to look at it from different perspectives, definitely.
Yeah, understood. I think these particular materials are so unique. I think we might, and we don't, we might have stayed away from that. But again, I don't know that we need to get into that.
Looking at the base of the addition is board form concrete, which blends beautifully with the weeping mortar brick. And, that could have been an interesting way to approach a smaller scale addition. We did discuss the idea of bringing this project to HPC for preliminary review before the work was done. Correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, but I remember my memory is that we had that discussion, but because of your family situation, you were very much you were, I think, paying 2 mortgages at the time, and you were really desperate to get this project moving forward. So you were taking your chances through the loss potential Mills Act and Glendo Register nomination. At the end of the day, I think the house is still a beautiful example of its type and quite unique in many ways. But yeah, the loss of the windows was a real killer in my perspective. And that was a surprise to all of us at the city side. So.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Doom, do you have any comments?
Sure, I'll throw in my 2 cents. That first was to thank the beautiful booklet that you provided and its history. It's a joy to read and see. And I understand completely there's the loss of the windows, but I understand the cost involved in maintaining those windows and replacing them was enormous. And also want to compliment that they did save a number of existing windows with the round wooden ship's wheel window and the window over the door, as well as going back and replacing the original lighting over the front door. And when I arrived at the house, I thought the addition was the first view from the street. And you would never know until I learned the uniqueness of the house and uniqueness of the architect that wasn't an addition, that was part of the original house. I understand completely the need for the addition. And I would have thought being on the back part, that was more of the original house. And I think it does a nice job blending it to make it match and preserving all the integrity of the wood inside and outside, the railings, and the overall appearance from the street looks completely original and unique. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Nick, very much. I'm not going to belabor this much. I kind of tend to agree with all the comments that have been made. And yes, thank you very much. This book, to all our future applicants, was a labor of love and is very much appreciated. But there are times that we have to just unfortunately pass on something, which is sad. And I think a lot of people think this is, and maybe I even wish some days that it could just be the Pretty House Act, not the Mills Act. But it's not. There are very specific things and very specific things that we have to look for and honor and all of that, unfortunately. And the reality is that sometimes people's lives take precedent and you have to make choices that unfortunately deem something unqualified. So with that, we do need to make a motion even if we're not recommending. Is that correct, Jay?
Yes, the applicant has the opportunity to move this forward to council if they choose, or they may choose to withdraw, depending, we'll talk about it after the hearing, but we do need a motion.
We need to take a stance either way.
Would be to not recommend that council designate and not recommend a Mills Act contract.
Could I just add one more cent before we vote?
Sure.
I looked at and listened to the totality and the view from the back of the house, and even though I did not think it was beautiful from the other street, this is one of those processes where we make a recommendation and you can still go to city council, and we don't always have to be unanimous. And I have visions of hearing Commissioner Morgan in my head over this house and a historical perspective of its architect. And so I think I'm going to vote yes on this. And all our recommendations are simply that, recommendations. So I'm going to vote yes on this recommendation.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Kathy.
Sorry, I respect your dissenting opinion. I do just want to say though that, we went to, well, I guess you couldn't make it, but we went to a 2-day training about how we are supposed to make decisions, which, has to do with the application of certain standards and, questions of integrity. And we don't tend to debate and discuss things very much on this. I think we tend to express our opinions. I just can't agree that the front facade of the house looks like what it did before those windows were replaced. You could even see you can't really tell from the photo in the booklet that we have, the copy, but the photo from the original book, the slender profile of the steel windows is very different from the wood replacements. And I mean, you could even see it. I won't ask Casey to go back and show the images, but there's a bulkiness to those windows that are just do not resemble the delicacy that you get with that original steel. And you know, steel is repairable. Steel, it doesn't warp. And I understand that, I do understand the applicant's desires in this regard, but I would like to say that those desires should not have an impact with how staff treats a property that they believe to be a potential historic resource, if it's going to adversely impact its eligibility. So I'll just leave it there, and you can vote how you like. I mean, this is the only time we can have these conversations, right? Because of the Brown Act. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the applicant to take this opportunity, but I think these are issues that we need to consider very seriously.
Thank you, Kathy. Do we have a motion?
I know nobody wants to make this motion, but I will make the motion. And before I do, I just will also reiterate that I know your family had very, very specific reasons for needing to get, you know, the double paned glass, and I can fully appreciate that. And again, thank you for bringing the nomination forward. So with that, I move that the HPC not recommend to the City Council that the property at 3018 Paddington Road not be listed. I'm sorry, there's an extra word in here. So I move that HPC recommend to the City Council that the property at 3018 Paddington Road not be listed in the Glendale Register of Historic Resources based on the findings identified in the staff determination. I also move that the Historic Preservation Commission not recommend that the City Council authorize the city manager to enter into a Millsack contract with the property owners for property tax savings.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kathy. Roll call, please, Jay.
Okay, Commissioner Doom?
Nay.
Commissioner Yurka?
Yes.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Yes.
And Commissioner Crignati?
Yes.
So vote 3-1 to not recommend designation or Millsack contract.
Thank you again, Beth, for coming and bringing everything forward. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to item 7B. 1575 Sheridan Road, Glendale Register Nomination and Millsack Application PMA 2119085.
Just want to jump in real quick before speaking. When Commissioner Yurka mentioned the training that many of the commissioners went through, we did pick up a valuable piece of advice that I recommend that we move forward with, and I've been forgetful about bringing this to you. It's important that the commissioners identify before their testimony whether they've had any interactions with the property owners before them. So that would mean indicating whether you made the site visit, which of course implies that you've discussed the project with the property owner. And if you've had any other ex parte outside of the setting of the tour communications, we should identify those things up front just to meet the Brown Act requirements and just be as transparent as possible. So I'll try to help you remember that, but if you guys also help me try to remember it, we'll work together. So
I meant to remember it for tonight and I forgot.
Me too.
All right, Casey, you're up. You have the floor.
Perfect. All right, this is item 7B, Glendale Register Nomination and Mills Act application for 1575 Sheridan Road. Staff recommends the historic name for the house as the Berg House after the original owners. 1575 Sheridan Road is also located in the Chevy Chase Canyon. The property is located north of the 134 as well and northwest of the Chevy Chase Golf Club. Site's on a 9,941 square foot irregularly shaped lot, and the residence measures 1,917 square feet. The property was one of 8 residences designed in 1957 by A. Quincy Jones and Frederick Emmons within the Chevy Chase Country Club Highlands Tract in the modern style post and beam construction. It is one of the few that retains a high degree of integrity. Jones was one of the key architects of the mid-20th century design in Southern California, receiving an array of awards, acclaim, and distinctions for his work. Jones was also closely associated with USC School of Architecture, teaching in the program for almost 30 years and serving as dean for 3. This property reflects a key pillar in designs of Jones, affordability for the average buyer, combined with high-style designs. Photos on the slide here are example of Jones's work, including the USC Annenberg School of Communications, the Gary Cooper residence, an Eichler Tract House from 1960, and one of the buildings from his work on the California State University Dominguez Hills campus. The residence was originally constructed for Ed and Alice Burks, who remained the owners until 2019. It was owned briefly by Alexander Burkhold and Andrew Norman, a lawyer and composer respectively, before being purchased by the current owners in 2020. The residence at 1575 Sheridan Road is a modern style post and beam construction building, clad in stucco and vertical T111 siding. The building has various flat and slanted roof planes with extremely wide eave overhangs and exposed beams which continue seamlessly into the interior space. The primary street-facing facade is dominated by a carport, and the primary entrance is recessed at the southern volume of the building. The entrance door is surrounded by a single side light and an angled transom light above. A triplet of floor-to-ceiling windows with angled headers can also be seen on the primary facade adjacent to the entrance. The rear facade conveys similar design features found on the front of the building, with varying walls of solid T111 siding and full height and single pane windows. A slumpstone fireplace is located to the east, which is somewhat visible from the primary facade as well. There's also a central atrium along the western side of the residence, which gives outdoor connection to the interior living spaces. The atrium is accessed by sliding aluminum doors with thin profiles and single pane fixed transoms above. The left photo here shows the atrium, and the right photo is just an additional view of the western facade towards the rear of the property. The building has seen some alterations over the years. At the left, you can see a small flat roof addition that was added at the rear in 1967 as a kitchen nook. And in 1968, a small addition was added west of the carport, which you see here on the right with that roof extension. Additionally, solar panels were added to the building in 2015, which can be seen from the public right away above the carport roof line, seen on the left-hand side of the slide. The right side of the slide shows the panel view from the rear yard. Though the building has seen some minor alterations over the years, these alterations do not deter from the original design intent of Jones and Emmons, and little additional massing and minimal, if any, removal of historic materials. The residence remains an excellent intact example of a modern style post and beam construction building in the city, and therefore staff finds the property eligible for listing in the Glendo Register under Criterion 3. Staff does recommend 2 Mills Act conditions, including the removal of the remnants of a dog-eared gate along the eastern facade, which should be replaced with an appropriate gate north of the fireplace, and the relocation or reconfiguration of the solar panels along the carport roof line to minimize their visibility from the public right-of-way. And also answer any questions on this property as well.
Thank you, Casey. Anyone have any questions? Okay. With that, I will open the public hearing, and our applicant is here to join us. He's been waiting patiently all evening, so thank you for that.
Hello, everyone. We'd like to thank you, the Historic Preservation Commission, Jay Platt and Casey Connolly, for coming to see our house in person and for the opportunity to talk with you this evening. We've been living in the house just over a year now. At times, we feel like we just moved in as we continue to make this our home. At other times, it feels like we've been living in the house much longer. I say that in the most positive way because it's a very easy house to live in. The Birds were the original owners and bought the house new in 1957. They lived in the house for more than 60 years. I imagine one of the reasons they lived in the house for so long is a result of the architecture and the siding of the house. The indoor-outdoor quality of the design makes it an authentic post-war mid-century modern home. Or maybe I should say it's an example of a mid-century modest, since the houses in the neighborhood were marketed to middle-class families. Our house is among a group of modern homes that are part of a larger housing tract with different architectural styles. As far as I know, this is the only architectural housing tract in Glendale with modern homes. For the company who constructed the houses, Morley Builders, this was a very early tract in their long history. I think this points to the influence of architects on builders and perhaps the how and why of Morley hiring Jones and Emmons to design a modern house for the tract. Morley would have known about the success Jones and Emmons had designing Eichler homes in Northern California. This tract of homes in Glendale predates their Eichler homes in Southern California. Historic designation certainly adds to pride of ownership, but designation is also about preservation and responsibility. We hope you feel our house is worthy of historic designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Jay, do we have any callers?
We have no callers.
All right. With that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments? Questions? Kathy, why don't you go first?
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lorna.
I'm going to keep it short, but I'm going to say that I definitely can support this nomination. I do think the home is worthy. I am so glad you came upon this gem. Jay, did we know that this little tract or this home existed, or is this sort of a new find for us?
I knew there were Jones houses scattered around in Chevy Chase Estates, Chevy Chase Canyon area. There's one right on Chevy Chase, right at the junction with Golf Club Drive. I think it's Golf Club there. And that's probably the most visible. I wasn't aware of when you turn, I can't remember, Jeffrey, we turn on the street uphill from you and we see several more Joneses there. So I wasn't quite aware. We have lists of modern properties that have been given to us over the years. I don't remember. I didn't go back. I don't remember having one that had all of these. So.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, I'm pleased, and I'm pleased that Jeffrey, that you came upon this. Thank you so much for the tour of the home, for all of your vision of what you want to do to keep it and restore some of the things you want to refine a little bit. I also see you have a detailed work plan, so thank you for that. And yeah, I feel we're just fortunate to have, I think the addition of the kitchen addition in the back was very early on, but very, very sensitive to the overall architecture of the house. So those are my comments. I thank you, and I look forward to hearing my colleagues.
Thank you, Lorna. Kathy?
Yes, I also was able to tour the house, and it's a magnificent example of mid-century modern post and beam. I was very happy to get to see it in person because I'd admired the tract from the outside, and I was familiar with that little grouping of A. Quincy Jones, thanks to the applicant. And I did have one question about the work plan. And does it include, when you talk about the hardscaping, does that include the repair of the driveway?
Yes.
Let me open up the public hearing. Hold on one second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Public hearing. That's okay. That's okay. Go ahead, Jeffrey. You may now.
It does include the carport and the driveway and the steps. I didn't really do a good budget on that, but regardless, it's going to get done.
Okay, yeah, because I know you had indicated the need, and I just wanted to make sure that that was part of what we were approving as a work plan, even though, I believe that it seems really important that that work be done. In terms, this is a question for Jay, in terms of replacing the brickwork at the curb, for a Glendale Register house, is that allowed to be replaced with concrete?
I'd have to see a picture when you're talking about the curb, at the little retaining wall where the planters are. Or is it a little walkway? I can't remember.
There's a bricked area in the driveway, isn't that right?
Yeah, let's double check on the photos.
It's a brick pattern in the driveway.
Yeah, well, the brick in the driveway is completely wrong for the house.
Right.
And you're talking about the retaining wall at the planter also?
No, I just want to be sure that it's possible to replace it with concrete. It would have been concrete, correct?
Yeah, no, we would want to see this turn into kind of a plain concrete driveway.
Okay.
Unless we learned through Jones's drawings or anything that there was something different or potentially different there. Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure that it's allowed for a Glendale Register property, because I know, it's pavers and various other permeable things. And I wanted to strongly urge that it be allowed to return to an appropriate concrete material.
There are also ways to do concrete where it has some permeability with a scoring pattern that allows water sheeting off the surface to percolate into the ground. So we could consider something like that and still have the overall appearance of the concrete. But yes, we have decorative paving requirements in our general code. And sometimes planners are like, we must put decorative paving. And I'm like, well, most historic houses had plain Jane concrete. So until we know there was something else, that's usually what we'd go back to.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. And otherwise, I'm happy to support the designation of the property in the Millsack contract. Thanks.
Great. Okay, I'm going to reclose the public hearing at this point. Okay, Mr. Doom, do you have any thing to say?
I would like to also add that I enjoyed touring the house and meeting the owner for the first time, and loved the interior as well as the exterior original intent of the house, and the floor, the concrete floor plan, and the design of the wood and the use of the brick on the exterior and interior wall, the fireplace on one of the side of the houses was really unique and different, and I liked it a lot.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Doom. I did too. Thank you for having us. It was really nice to tour the property. I didn't go inside, but the outside, it's great. It's a really cool house. I like it when, don't take this the wrong way, modest sized homes get put on the register. I think a lot of people think that our register is really just for the big, beautiful, stately, crazy, big houses that we have in town. And so it's always nice when we have a house, like you said, built for the middle class to be on the register. Jay, I think, can we talk about before we go into a motion, can we just talk about the condition? I'm reading the first condition now about the dog-eared fence. And I think when I was at the property speaking with the applicant, it was a little bit of I had a different idea of what that was. So you're talking specifically about just the little piece of fence that is sort of perpendicular to the house, right?
We probably should have made it's more a remnant of what looks like a gate that was there.
Yeah.
It's very similar, and it's funny that you mentioned that. We kind of forgot in this nomination to mention that very recently the commission approved another Jones house on West Kenneth Road.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That has some interesting similarities to this. It's an earlier house before he was partnered with Emmons, and that had a similar situation with the gate on the side. So
it did. Dog-eared fencing. Yeah. What is it with mid-century and dog-eared? Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to be clear, because when I was talking to the applicant, I remember we were talking about the fence that is actually the neighbor's fence. And he did mention that he had a conversation with the neighbor and that they might be changing that, but I wanted to make sure that that fence was not part of
Yeah,
the
we're
condition.
just,
Not
we
his
can
fence.
think of it as getting rid of that stub that's there and putting a new gate and pushing it further back from the front of the house.
Okay. And if he happens to work out a deal with his neighbor where that fence that runs along the property line gets changed, great, but that's not part of our condition.
Right.
Okay. And then does anyone have a comment about the solar panels? I mean, I really struggle to find and see the solar panels. And I think because the house is on a slope, it's on a downhill slope, it's going to be hard to ever make them not visible from the street. And I don't necessarily think that we need to have a condition about altering the solar panels. That seems maybe a little bit too much of an ask for me. I don't think it's necessary, having driven up and down and realizing there's no way you're ever going to get rid of them. So does anyone else have any comments about that before we go into motion making time? Kathy?
I agree.
Okay.
I find them, I mean, I didn't even notice them when I was there. I've forgotten to look for them. And also that's a reversible alteration. At some point they will need to be replaced. They can be moved to or they might be replaced with some other material in this wonderful future.
Elon Musk is going to come up with some amazing thing for all of us.
When a postage stamp on top of the roof will supply all of our electrical needs, but I'm comfortable omitting that as a condition.
Omitting that. Okay, good. Okay. Now I did want to talk about the driveway, and so the question I have for you, Jay, is, and something I tend to forget, is the work plan that a homeowner submits. Do those automatically become conditions? They don't, do they?
They haven't historically. No, you can add a condition from the work plan if you think it's important enough. We don't police the work plan the way some cities do. That's, again, one of the differences we'll have with the Millsack for historic districts is a much more active expectation of what's going to be done. If city council would have to direct us to change our Millsack policy because we've been doing it from the beginning, I believe.
Okay. So yeah, one of the things I mentioned to the applicant when I was there, I would like for the commission to consider adding the concrete driveway as a condition, give them a couple years to do it. If God forbid they had to sell the house and we had given them the Mills Act and that wasn't a condition and it didn't get done, that would not be cool. So I would like to recommend that whomever makes the motion add that in there with what they think is an appropriate time frame. Jay, what would be appropriate? 2 years for something like that? It's kind of a big job. I just had mine done and it's kind of a big job.
Yeah, I would say 2 years is probably okay. Jeffrey can nod his head or shake it vigorously if he opposes.
How do you feel about 2 years? Is it good? Great, thank you. Okay. Okay.
Just for staff's future consideration of solar projects, we have approved solar on Millsack properties in the past. One time by going to the commission, which at that point spent a lot of time thinking how can we minimize the appearance. I personally and I professionally, and I think my staff colleagues agree, we don't want to stand in the way of people doing solar, but there can be very obtrusive and bad installations. One of the reasons we thought that on the carport roof, where we are at the front of the house, and I agree it's very inobtrusive in this case, though when you get an oblique view coming up from the side, you can see that the panels are raised at the angle that's recommended by the solar companies to be most efficient. Our thought there was to lower those so they were flat. If the commission wants to not have the condition for this case because it's so not visible, we understand completely, but moving forward, if you could give us any guidance in terms of, say, a house that's coming to us to put new panels on, should we focus on minimizing their visibility to the greatest degree possible?
That is a very fair question. I certainly would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that too.
So through this application, we have some stronger guidance moving forward for this. So.
Yes.
And I think, Jay, you might be referencing a house in the Rossmoyne Historic District. I think we went through great pains to figure out how to place those panels. Right. And I think it's a good idea.
As a result of that, we allowed panels on another Millsack property where they were visible only through looking through the trees from half a block away. and overall didn't seem to have an impact on the house. So
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea to minimize as much as possible. Though I don't think we need to make it a condition here if that's what we're all hurrying on.
Oh, I just wanted to add my support, Chris, for your comment about the concrete driveway, making that a condition, because that was also a concern for me. I completely believe in the applicant's intent to do the work and rapidly, but you raised a good point. I mean, the previous owners unexpectedly sold the house, within a very short time of buying it. You never know what happens. So I think that's reasonable.
Cool. Do I have a commissioner that would like to make a motion?
I would like to move that Lorna do it because she's always so good at it.
Oh, that's okay. That's because Jay has them prepared. So I'd be happy to make the motion.
You gave away a secret.
Sorry, I'm not supposed to do that, right? I move that the HPC recommend to the City Council that the property at 1575 Sheridan Road, to be called the Berg House, be listed in the Glendale Register of Historic Resources based on the findings identified in the staff determination, and with the condition that the hardscape at the front of the house and the driveway be changed to concrete appropriately appropriate to the home.
With the 2-year
good enough?
window.
We got 2 years.
With a 2-year window.
Yeah, within by the end of 2024, should we say?
Yeah.
Okay, by the end of 2024.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, by the end of 2023.
23, yeah, 2023.
Oh, right.
2023.
I noticed that on the work plan, the applicant had put 2024 to 2025, but since we're taking off the relocation of the solar panels, hopefully the end of 2023 will be okay. Okay, yes. Thank you. And further, that the HPC recommend that the City Council authorize the city manager to enter into a Millsack contract with the property owners for property tax savings with the condition noted above.
Really quickly, before we're done making that motion, did we still want to keep in the dog-eared fence thing, the little remnant of the dog-eared fence? That was one.
Were we making that a condition?
The condition number 1, yeah.
Condition.
Okay.
I just wanted clarity on that it was the little piece of fence and not the whole fence running down the yard.
Okay. Yeah, and additionally with the, I don't have the language for the replacement of the dog-eared fence.
Remove the remnants of the dog.
Supporting the staff condition regarding you're maintaining the staff condition. That's okay.
There we go.
Yes, okay.
That's good. Great. Okay, you got it, Jay? How do you feel about that?
I got
motion? Good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Terrific. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Yurka?
Yes.
Commissioner Doom?
Yes.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Yes.
And Chair Crognati?
That's a yes. Thank you, Mr. Ed, very much for sitting through and waiting it out and for bringing your house forward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
We're very excited for you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great evening and a great holiday.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Jay.
Before you adjourn, let's congratulate Casey on her auspicious debut.
Yes.
Yes.
Congratulations. Good job. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We're so happy.
Me too.
Do you have any updates for us, Jay, on anything else?
No, I didn't pull together any updates. And I already updated you on Bellhurst during the presentation. That we just got the insurance so we can move forward with preparing the contract for the consultant to do the survey. Right. And then we are also going to be, I mentioned the Mills Act for Historic District contributors. We've been cranking on that. And then also we have to do the RFP for the East-West survey. So Casey and I will be busy through December. And
you may have already announced this, but when are the districts going before council? The 2 districts from tonight?
Well, first we go to the Planning Commission.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
Change, that's December 1st. And notices have already gone out to the public for that. Everyone's getting 3 separate notices this year. And then council is December 14th.
Great.
Yay, very soon. Good job. All right.
We also have the house we just mentioned, the other Quincy Jones house is going to council on the 7th. I don't think we're going to be able to squeeze this house onto that, but it's a slight possibility. So don't tell Jeffrey.
Oh, the A Quincy Jones house hasn't gone to council yet?
No, you just voted on it recently.
Oh, I thought it had already gone. What about
Our
what
previous.
about the other house that we did the same night?
Oh wait. Oh.
Oh, you mean this one?
No. Now, okay, you are correct, but now I have to find my notes.
Because I believe the Glendale Historical Society is coming out with an article about 2 new houses on the Glendale Register.
Stop the presses. That's a big no. The Millsack contract for the Lowry house is going to council on the 7th.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I knew something was coming, but I'm a little,
Okay.
All right.
Very good.
Any other announcements, Jay?
That's it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we are adjourned at 8:05 p.m. See you all next week.